Hi everyone, I'm Mike Handcock and welcome to our Sacred Wisdom series. Atlantis, the lost continent. Plato first wrote about it in Timaeus and Critias almost 2,500 years ago. But was it real? There's an inscription on an ancient papyrus who wrote about such things called Westdeset Netu. Manetho, a priest in Heliopolis, talked about the time before the dynasties. In fact, he wrote the history of the line of kings, demigods and gods, going back almost 35,000 years, long before pre-recorded history. So do you believe in Atlantis? Was it the predecessor to Egypt? In this series, we're going to find out. You see, there are many sacred sites around the world, and I've been to a lot of them in my travels to 99 countries around the globe. In 2009, we took a group of people to Mexico, following the Mayan prophecies and looking for what was going to be happening coming up to 2012. And the culmination of that trip was at Chichen Itza on the Yucatan Peninsula. And it was actually the solstice in 2009. It was the end of summer, so moving into the autumn, mid-September. And there we were on a place that the Mayans called the altar of Atlantis. So how did this connection happen to get to Mexico and many other ways around the world that was written only about in recorded history in these ancient Greek texts by Plato? Well, firstly, let's have a look at where the sacred sites are related around the world. If you take a picture of the world here and we look at the Giza Plateau and we start drawing a line around this plateau, from here in Egypt it comes around into the Indus Valley, through the sacred sites of India, and then down and through here into Easter Island, which is way out here in the Pacific, then through Machu Picchu itself and up through some of the Mayan temples here in Venezuela and Guatemala, and comes right back here to Cairo. This actually creates a ring around the world, which includes sites like Machu Picchu, like Borobudur in Indonesia, like Easter Island. These are phenomenal ancient sites and they're all linked. So why were they linked? You see, there's a tribe here in Africa, in Mali in Central Africa here, called the Dogons. And the Dogon tribe, when the British first came across them in the middle of the 19th century, they said, "What is the heritage of your tribe?" And the chief of the Dogons pointed up at Sirius and he said, "Do you see that star?" He said, "Yes." He said, "We come from the sister star of that star." Of course, the British didn't see a sister star and it wasn't able to be seen at that time. But since the development of telescopes, we've now know that Sirius does have a sister star. In fact, you've probably heard of Sirius A and Sirius B. So where the Dogon chief pointed to those 150 years ago was right to the centre of Sirius B. And he said that their tribe came from there. The Australian Aboriginals back this up in their journey to Dreamtime. Whenever you meet with Aboriginal elders at places like Ayers Rock and other places. And we did that in 2012 when we ventured to Ayers Rock, actually to see what would happen on the 21st of the 12th, the so-called end of the world. We met with the Aboriginals there. And when they talk about Dreamtime, they talk about a time when man had built a bridge from Earth to the stars. This bridge is what it's talked about. And now through sciences like the noetic sciences, we've come to understand that our Earth has like a film around it, sort of like a glow, sort of an aura, if you like. And that aura we call the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records is the record of everything there's ever been, everything that there is, and everything that there ever will be. So how do you tap into this? Many psychics have a way of tapping into the Akashic record. Yet, did the Atlanteans tap into the Akashic record? Did they understand that their time was coming to an end? How long ago was their time? Was it 5,000 years, 20,000 years, 100,000 years, or perhaps 1,000,000 years ago? And what significance is this fascination for us here in the 21st century with Atlantis? I'm not sure what you've read about it, but what I will say is that as we unpack this thing through this little Sacred Wisdom show on Atlantis, I'm going to be sharing some very typical ways in which Atlantis relates to our modern world. Whether it be that our Dogon chief was correct and truly the Atlanteans came from the stars, in a theory that's called seeding the earth, where a great council of people, star beings, came together and seeded the earth to try and create, if you like, a superior being. Earth apparently being one of the mining places of other nations in the stars. Unfortunately, much of this information has been destroyed, but it sat in Iraq, and it sat with the Sumerians, who talked of the sky gods, the Anunnaki. And one of the reasons, perhaps, if you're a bit of a conspiracy theorist, that you might think that the Iraq war was about Saddam Hussein. I'm not sure it was. Saddam Hussein himself was actually somebody who worked for the CIA in the 1960s. Yet, was it about oil? I'm not so sure about that. It's well known that America has more than enough oil reserves under its own land in Alaska and with its sister country Canada, that it doesn't need the oil in the Middle East. Or was it about something else? Was it about protecting sacred ancient information depicted on frescoes from ancient Babylon and through the Sumerians that went right back to our concept of Atlantis? After the break, we're going to unpack this a little bit more, and I hope you're as excited as I am to be sharing this with you.
We don't do travel, we do profound life experiences. Welcome to Soul Journeys Travel. For more than 10 years, we have led groups of conscious individuals to some of the most exotic ancient sites on Earth. Machu Picchu and Incan empires, Egyptian gods in the pyramids, Mayan prophecies, Viking adventures, On the Trail of the Templars, and even Asia's first spiritual cruise are just some of the spectacular individually crafted tours run here at Soul Journeys. Not only will you experience ancient wonders and sights your eyes have waited a lifetime for, our leaders will help you experience sacred circles, past life experiences, inner journeys, and de-engineering of your human programs that will assist you in overcoming undercurrents and blind spots that have held you back in your life. You will experience a deep and true wisdom, and at Soul Journeys, we share the alternative archaeology and research completed by our leaders that will help you understand that much of what you have learned and have been conditioned with is a lie, allowing you to make better and more informed personal decisions in your life from then on. Some of our clients have done up to 8 journeys with us. Why, you may ask? Because at Soul Journeys, we design personal and intimate journeys for your soul to magical ancient sites around the world, coupled with brilliant leadership, wisdom, and coaching. Join us and have a profound life experience. Go to www.rockyourlife.net and click on Soul Journeys.
Welcome back to Atlantis. I guess you've done some research yourself, or else you wouldn't be watching this show. It's probably not the first show you've watched on Atlantis, but your question is, where is it? And there are many theories to where it is. In fact, Edgar Cayce, the great intuitive of the early part of the 20th century, said that in the 1960s, people would find evidence of a continent, a civilization under the Atlantic Sea off the coast of Florida that he said was Atlantis. And sure enough, in around about 1963, they actually did find that. You can Google it. It's called the Bimini Road, Bimini, which is just offshore of the Bimini Islands in the Bahamas. And when you go underneath the surface there, you'll truly see what looks to be a man-made road under there. That's one theory of potentially where Atlantis was. The second theory is if you go to Okinawa, off the shores there in a small island off the coast of Japan, and you go off that island probably about 1 mile to 2 miles, underneath the ocean in a very rough patch of water are temples, pyramid-shaped temples. Again, they have a road around the exterior of these temples. And there's much research being done on these. Are they man-made or are they some sort of crazy natural phenomenon? I'll let you be the one to decide on that. Then, other pyramidal structures found off the coast of Malta in around 90 feet of water, including altars and what is called the Holy of Holies, which is very typical of an Egyptian temple found there. What are they about? Well, one thing's for sure is that all of these structures must have predated the melting of the last ice age. See, the last ice age, around about 8,500 BC, so around about 10,000 years ago, the ice finally melted. And the ice age had carried on for a couple of thousand years, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years. However, what happened when the ice melted was this, that above Canada, if you lived in Canada back then, you'd be pretty cold because there was a 6 kilometre high shelf of ice above Canada. That's a long way, okay? 6 kilometres high. So you're 6 kilometres high in a plane, you're getting up there, it's pretty high. When that finally melted, it started creating a lake and the walls were the last things to melt. When those walls went down, it created a tidal wave that started 6 kilometres high. You can only imagine the damage that did. That's what caused the Mississippi River as it ran down through America and straight down and out into the Gulf of Mexico. But around the world, the sea rose 180 feet. Now, just like today, if you're living in Sydney, Los Angeles, Cape Town, Singapore, any of these places, you're right on the ocean. Just imagine if the water rose 180 feet. That's what happened in the old world. So there are more submerged ancient civilizations than we have yet found. So my personal belief and my personal feeling is that Atlantis wasn't one place, but it was a civilization, a place before our time. New information's come to light. In 1513, a Portuguese admiral named Piri Reis created a map. This map is now in a museum in Italy. However, this is what the map did. It depicted a land, and the land was like no other land around the world. Nobody recognized this land, and it had mountains and it had rivers and it had forests. Yet in 1948, we finally were able to establish where that land was because we finally had the seismic and geotechnical equipment to discover that land. It's called Antarctica, and what Piri Reis had drawn on that map, which he'd based on many maps even more obscure like the Orientius Phineas map, was a land that existed before it was capped with snow. You see, the Earth would have been on a different tilt then, and on a different tilt, the South Pole is not where the South Pole is now. So, if that's the case, many theories say that Atlantis was actually in Antarctica. One thing we know for sure though is just like my globe here sitting next to me, which has all these latitude and longitude lines all around it, we know one thing. We know that there are ley lines that connect the different sacred sites. I mentioned one earlier that goes around the world. That's a significant one. There is a ley line that connects Cape Town in South Africa, right down the bottom here, right up through India, through the Indus Valley, which was one of the oldest civilizations, and straight across into Japan, also one of the oldest civilizations. So these ley lines or power points are like where fast tracks of information can go. So think about it like optic fiber cabling wrapping around the world with different communication points. And what you do understand when you go to these ancient places like Egypt or like Bolivia and Peru, and you listen to the well-meaning guides who have learnt at university, which means one spin, the word universe comes from the word one spin, where Cosmos is all-encompassing and beauty. It's a different word entirely. So the university-educated, well-meaning guides will teach you that places like Tiwanaku on the shores of Bolivia, of Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, and the Osirian at Abydos in Egypt are only a few thousand years old. But when you look, and when you stand in front of it and you look at the structures of both of those, which by the way are quite identical, then you realise that these are many, many thousands of years older than what any other structure in Egypt is. In fact, the way that they're built is significantly different. And also, the ancient bird god, the myth of Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris, the paternal and maternal father and mother of Egypt, is exactly the same myth as the myth of Quetzalcoatl. So we're talking African myth and South American myth here. Quetzalcoatl is the great bird god of the Mayan people and of other tribes in South America. Both of these gods were called the Veracoa in South America, meaning white person. So they were white bird-like gods. So we already know that within Egypt and within the Mayan cultures, the people were not white. So why are these gods white? Why are they blonde-haired? Why are they blue-eyed? Did they come from a previous time? After the break, we're going to look further at what the Atlanteans' legacy was to us, the way in which they left that legacy, and how this all links up and what it means to you in your modern day life wherever you are around the world.
We don't do travel, we do profound life experiences. Welcome to Soul Journeys Travel. For more than 10 years, we have led groups of conscious individuals to some of the most exotic ancient sites on Earth. Machu Picchu and Incan empires, Egyptian gods and the pyramids, Mayan prophecies, Viking adventures, On the Trail of the Templars, and even Asia's first spiritual cruise are just some of the spectacular individually crafted tours run here at Soul Journeys. Not only will you experience ancient wonders and sights your eyes have waited a lifetime for, our leaders will help you experience sacred circles, past life experiences, inner journeys, and de-engineering of your human programs that will assist you in overcoming undercurrents and blind spots that have held you back in your life. You will experience a deep and true wisdom, and at Soul Journeys, we share the alternative archaeology and research completed by our leaders that will help you understand that much of what you have learned and have been conditioned with is a lie, allowing you to make better and more informed personal decisions in your life from then on. Some of our clients have done up to 8 journeys with us. Why, you may ask? Because at Soul Journeys, we design personal and intimate journeys for your soul to magical ancient sites around the world, coupled with brilliant leadership, wisdom, and coaching. Join us and have a profound life experience. Go to www.rockyourlife.net and click on Soul Journeys.
So who were the Atlanteans and what did they leave us? One of the great stories that I love very much is the mystery of the crystal skulls. And as legend has it, the 13 tribes of the universe, when they seeded this planet Earth, they left information coded into 13 different crystal skulls, representing the 13 star groups that came together in the great council of the skies that seeded this Earth. Now, crystal skulls. Why a crystal skull? Firstly, I want you to imagine that if you have any sort of cell phone or device on you, that the memory in that initially was captured in a little bit of quartz crystal, just the same as memory in your computer. So when you have a skull operating like the shape of a human head and that crystal is resonating into the brain there, how much information can that hold? And the idea and the mythology behind it is that at a certain time in the world, those skulls would come back together in a way, and that would uplift the consciousness of the earth, and we then would know everything that we need to know that was downloaded to us from these ancient star god cultures such as the Anunnaki. Now, In the early 1920s, a lady named Anna Mitchell Hedges was on a dig in Belize with her father, who was a great archaeologist and explorer. They were from the United Kingdom. On one morning, the morning of her 16th birthday, she was the only person out of all the group of helpers and everything that fit down this hole in a Mayan pyramid. And so she went down there very, very scared, and something gleamed up at her from the bottom. And lo and behold, what did she pull out? A crystal skull. This skull became known as the Mitchell Hedges skull, and it's probably the most well-known crystal skull in the world. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because there's no explanation of how this was made. If you talk to any engineer or artist and ask how to make a skull out of one solid piece of quartz crystal with a totally moving jaw that's anatomically correct to the human skull, they would tell you that it would take hundreds of years, meaning many, many generations of artisans, and that it probably couldn't be done because crystal is so fragile that at any stage it may just crack and the whole thing would need to start again. This skull has been analysed by the Smithsonian Institute and analysed by the Hewlett-Packard laboratories. And Anna herself, during her 100 years on this planet, said that the skull used to talk to her, and at times it would even sing a song. Was this the great way in which the Atlanteans left their legacy? Or was it in other ways? Firstly, our language itself, Proto-Indo-European, is the history of our language. We can track it back to the city of on the joining of the Tigris and Euphrates River in ancient Sumeria, now Iraq. This is where the basis of many, many languages, from Hindu to Spanish to English to Afrikaans, came from this one language from Sumeria. But these days, English seems to be the most supported language in the world. If you're a pilot, for instance, you can only speak in English to the control tower. If you go to anywhere these days, the common language is English. So was language something that was given to us by the Atlanteans? If it was, they did it very, very well. Because when you look at the different combinations of words, you'll understand the power in the words. You see, words itself never used to have the S on the back. The S used to be on the front. We used to kill people with our sword. Then we started killing people with our words. And who do we kill mostly with our words? We kill ourselves with our words. Just think of the word live, L-I-V-E. Now flip it around. It's the word evil, the absolute opposite of the word live. Think of the word flow, which is a topic of one of our other shows in this series. Turn that around and it's wolf, the animal which the ancients saw as having the most graceful flow of all of the animals. Words are power. Be careful of your words, my friend. Now, Einstein said this. Einstein said, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a persistent one. So maybe one of the other things that came from these ancient Atlanteans was a reality, our reality. And this is how it was created. Before anything, there was nothing. And if there's nothing, nothing's pretty boring. So nothing creates something. Let's assume this circle here is the something that's created. If this is something, then inside the circle is all, and outside the circle is nothing. All or nothing. This is the basis of the start of the most practical thing that we use every day in all of our lives, sacred geometry. Then we take all, and all becomes board, so it must create another all. Now there's two of these. Putting these two together is a shape which is one of the most synonymous shapes in sacred geometry and in every building around the world. It's called the vesica biscus. Add another circle on, the baby, and suddenly we have the Father, the Son, and the child. Or, in Christianity, the Holy Trinity. Add another circle on and another circle, and you'll actually see, if you go and look at the way that life itself is created on this planet, It's a basis of these circles coming together to form you, the person that sits in front of you. From one cell becomes trillions of cells. Now, the human mind can't comprehend trillions, and the Atlanteans knew that. So they left a symbol, which is the 13, the sacred number from Egypt, the 13 derivations of the one cell, the one circle. We call it the flower of life, and it's the most significant symbol in any sort of sacred ancient wisdom. It was carved onto the temples of the Osirian in Egypt, which goes back over 13,000 years. And it's in Mexico, it's in China, it's used in the Indus Valley, and derivations have used in it in everything from the Kabbalah, which is one of the little chains that I'm wearing around my neck, which the points in this are based on the same points of the circle. Pythagoras and Plato following him took this flower of life symbol, and they understood that within it, from a three-dimensional viewpoint, were all of the Platonic solids, the 5 Platonic solids, which is the dodecahedron, the tetrahedron, etc., etc. And those 5 Platonic solids are the three-dimensional things that make up everything in the world, from a flower to the human body to a building. And finally, that three-dimensional Platonic solid that they did aligns to the 5 elements of fire, of earth, of water, of metal, and of wood from the Chinese. So all of this is linked. So perhaps the great gift of the Atlanteans was not some sort of cosmic knowledge, but was the record of the Akashic records handed down through ultimately little bits of crystal, or big bits of crystal, like Table Mountain in Cape Town, the biggest bit of crystal on earth. And when you go to these places, and I suggest that you do, look for signs that are well past, well ancient, because they've found things like the Antikythera device in Greece. That is a device that is really the first computer going back to 1500 BC. And they've found the Dogon stones, the Dropa stones in China, which is a record of a symbol going back over 10,000 years. And they've found parts of axes in the UK that are back to 2 million years ago. Look back further than what you've ever believed. Read Manetho and study the wisdom of sacred geometry. That's the gift of the Atlanteans.